Jane Cowan reporting from Ferguson in the state of Missouri. Ed Blakely is Professor of Urban Policy at the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, has written widely on issues of poverty and inequality within the United States, also famously the recovery czar in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Ed Blakely, thanks very much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about the situation as you see it now. We saw the Trayvon Martin case a couple of years ago where an African-American teenager was gunned down by a vigilante neighbourhood watch person. We've had the Rodney King case. We've seen these things before. What makes this one different, it seems, is that it was the police involved killing an 18-year-old black man, it seems, in cold blood.
Well, it does. I mean, 8 bullets. You know, that's not defending yourself, okay? And if a guy's beating you up, shooting him is not the recourse, right? But the police have special dispensations in matters like this, and let's hope we get to the bottom of this one, and it's not just a civil rights case. It sounds like murder. But the bigger issue here is something that most of the media has been covering. When you saw those tanks, you saw that big force, that military force, this is something that's gone on in the United States for about the last decade. And I noticed it. That the police are driving around in tanks and half-tracks and so forth. When I was in New Orleans, they were in half-tracks, you know. It was like we're an occupied country. And I think there are a couple things going on here. The drug war brought out this huge military operation to deal with the drug dealers, all right? And then terrorism, you know, 9/11, etc. You bring out these big forces. Now that these guys have been trained, and some of them ex-military, what do? They use that training. They think it's normal. But against civilians, it's way too much. And you saw this evening's reaction. People are glad to see the cops gone. They're behaving like citizens would anywhere.
How provocative was it, Ed? It seems like there's almost now as much about the response and the fact that if the police weren't heavy-handed enough in shooting an 18-year-old on his way to visit his grandmother on a Saturday afternoon, the response, this military-style response, it's told everybody that to be black in America is to be treated more harshly in the eyes of the law. It
is, and that is true. Let's just admit that. That if you're a black teenager and you're the wrong place, the wrong time, and a cop approaches you, bad things can happen. Don't have to happen, but they can happen. And it's unfortunate, but it's not just true in America. Let's be really honest here. We have a rising prison rate here. How many of these people are white? Almost all of them black in the last 5 years. So it's not just a local problem.
And it was interesting to see how the social media outlets responded to this too. There was a hashtag yesterday, I believe, John, if they gunned me down. Black men putting on images on Facebook and on Twitter of, if they gunned me down, this is the image that the media would show. And they had comparative images. I think we can pull some up now. You know, the media would show the one on the left of the guy looking more like a gangster, not the one on the right.
Same guy.
So is the media also a culprit in this whole mismanagement, in a sense?
Well,
of these issues?
I mean, the more you put this out there, the more people become involved in it, right? So as the media put out pictures of the armed police, more and more people came out. And so there is this perception, and the social media, of course, really rack this up, make it far worse, because more people see it, more people are touched by it, and this will go beyond Ferguson.
Tell us a little bit about the significance of the fact that this is happening in the city of St. Louis, in Missouri, in the Midwest of the United States, arguably the whiter part of America, the Midwest, and this is a city that has in many ways remained more segregated than a lot of the United States as well.
Yeah, well, that's true. Two things are going on here. This is a suburban community. Blacks, as their incomes have gone up, they've chosen to move to the near suburbs. Whites moved. Some moved into the inner city, all right? Property value has gone up. So that's forced more African Americans and low-income people out to the suburbs, where the police force had never seen people like this, didn't know their behavior. These are strange folks to them. So even in some cases, the city council might be half Latino, but the police force that was there before is still there. And You know, and I've been to some of these things in the States. They go to so-called sensitivity training. The cops laugh at it.
Can you do anything about that fact? You talk about the physical separation because of house prices and where folks choose to live. You've been involved in trying to regenerate cities, to bring them back to life after disasters, man-made and natural. Can you engineer more integration, or is this just people being people?
Well, there's some of both. But some communities have gone a very long way, and the best experience is called Hope 6. This is where neighborhoods are integrated. Low-income people with middle-income people. The police force looks like the community, looks like the neighborhood. So when a policeman sees somebody, he thinks he's my neighbor. That makes a huge difference. This goes back to Henry Cisneros. And those programs in Seattle and places like that where they've been put in, violence has gone down. In one neighborhood, it was the most violent place in Seattle, I think hasn't had even a burglary in the last 4 or 5 years. So it can make a huge difference. What people want to do is live in neighborhoods that feel safe, that are safe, and the police are their friends and their neighbors.
Speaking of the police force in Ferguson, I believe there's only 3 black officers when the actual population is 2/3 black. How important is it to represent the black community within the police force?
How does this happen? Okay? The way it happens is just the way it would here. That the policeman is hired in a community that's all white. The community changes, but his job hasn't changed. Now, he may even move out of the neighborhood, out of that whole community, but come back in for his workplace. So this is an alien community for him all of a sudden, and the people view him as an alien person, and they treat one another in that way. So the conflict is built in the situation. What I've seen in some communities, San Francisco did this, I don't know if it's holding up, that the police officer must live within a certain amount of time or certain distance from his or her job. Well, what does that mean? They start moving into the city. They start living with the people, and they start reflecting them. Some cities are under court order. Some of the big cities are under court order to integrate their force, not just by color, but homophobia is an issue, Asians, Latinos, and now we have the Arabic community that has to be represented in the police. That means people's hairstyles and things like that have to be reflected in the police force. So this is a big issue. The police officer, the first person in uniform, you tell your kid, if you're in trouble, go to the person in uniform. That person has to protect you, not kill you.
Ed Blakely, thank you so much for spending some of your Friday night with us in the studio. We so appreciate it.
Thank you.